Okay, we'll make a start then. So, welcome everybody to the Belgian Power Addicts edition of the Global Power Platform Bootcamp 2022. This is part of a series of different events that are running across all sorts of different geographies. It's been really great to see the number of people getting involved. All time zones. There seems to be, something happening. For the past 48 hours, an event happening somewhere across the globe. So, really great to see this, and obviously great to see so many people getting involved and sort of embracing the opportunity to sort of just, learn more about the platform and sort of be able to engage a bit further. So, we've got a couple of housekeeping rules before we jump into the main sort of content for today. So this is our code of conduct for the meeting today. So please do read this carefully. Please do make this a safe and welcoming space for everybody in the room today. We are an open and friendly group, and we ask that you are also the same. Please do at any point raise your hands, put a question in the chat. I'll do my best to try and answer things as we go along. And really, the idea behind this session today if we can keep it as interactive as possible, then hopefully you can drive as much value from the meeting as possible. So don't be afraid to ask any questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question, as I like to say, and just be respectful of others as well, as part of different exchanges and different sort of conversations. So you can use the Teams meeting chat to ask questions at any time. I've got the two screens set up on here, so I can just keep an eye on that at any point. If you wanted to speak at any point, then feel free just to unmute yourself. You can also turn your camera on if you wanted to. Please note that the session today is being recorded. So if you did not want your face, or you did not want to be able to speak, then please do not switch on your microphone or switch on your camera. And we've also got the nice little meeting reactions in Teams that we can use as well. So again, please make use of those where it's relevant to do so. So we wouldn't be able to do these type of events without the sponsors. So a huge thank you to the companies that we can see on here: Ordina, Amplexor, Process Delight, Matrix and CTG for sponsoring today's event. Please do go away and have a look at their services and what they can potentially do to help support you, as part of your IT journey or as part of your Power Platform journey. So there's a little bit about the slides on the slide here about myself. So hello, my name is Joe Griffin. I'm Managing Director of a small Microsoft Gold partner based in the UK, Solo Cloud Solutions. So I'm a Business Applications MVP and MCT. I've been working with the platform since its inception, having previously worked with what was known at the time Dynamics CRM and then Dynamics 365 Enterprise. So sort of saw the journey of that from a sort of more on-premise type environment into the online world, and then eventually the introduction of the Power Platform. So probably makes me a bit of a grizzled veteran in that regard, even though the 6 years probably doesn't feel like a long time. I tend to take a bit of a focus from a technical standpoint on the platform, and in particular when it comes to integrations alongside Microsoft Azure. So I'm an old hand when it comes to C#, .NET, SQL Server, Transact SQL, things like that. And in terms of the type of work that I do and what Solo does, it's a mixture of sort of consultancy, managed services, and training. Work with a variety of different customers, right through from companies with just a few employees, all the way up to sort of global sort of household names in terms of who are looking to sort of get the most out of the platform and be able to benefit from the capabilities in there. And as part of that, fortunate to have quite wide exposure across different sort of industry types, everything from print direct mail through to housing associations, construction, managed services, and more. So the purpose of today's session is really just to get you prepared to sit and familiarize yourself with the core content that you would need to know to pass the PL-900 exam. And the PL-900 exam is our Power Platform Fundamentals exam. So what we're going to be doing today, we're going to be going through and just looking at all aspects of the Power Platform and really just introducing them to you. As part of this, we'll have a series of different sort of demonstrations where we can hopefully get a bit more in depth and we can sort of show you the key elements. And hopefully by the end of today, you'll have the knowledge and the sort of the tools at your disposal to be able to go away and hopefully aim to sit this exam in the very near future. So we're going to first of all just introduce some of the core concepts relating to the Power Platform, as well as the sort of database as a service, Microsoft Dataverse that we have within there. We'll then move on and start looking at our Power Apps and discuss the various different types of Power Apps and really just try and set it very clear in your mind, what is the best app based on the scenario that we're faced with. From there, we'll move on and have a look at Power Automate capabilities, look at how we can use some elements such as our cloud flows to be able to, create these integrations and automations between our different business systems. We'll introduce Power BI to you and show you how you can go about building a very simple report and a simple dashboard using the service, and why it's really our sort of go-to tool when it comes to anything involving business intelligence within the Power Platform. And then finally, we'll show you how you can work with Power Virtual Agents, how you can build out a chatbot using this tool. PVA is quite a nice thing in terms of the capabilities in there, and also hopefully it's quite nice to demo. And it's also one of these tools that when we start to use other products within the Power Platform, we can really start to, as you would say, sort of start cooking with gas. We can really sort of move things forward, and we can, get the most out of the solution by doing that. So this is how our agenda for today is going to be looking like. So we'll have sort of 2 breaks, first in about sort of an hour and a half time, and then an hour's break for lunch. We'll sort of keep the meeting sort of live and just put some timers on, just so you know when to get back. And then we should have everything all closed off by around about sort of 5 p.m. Central European time. So quite a lot to sort of get through. So yeah, let's jump straight in and start looking at our first module, which is going to be an introduction to the Microsoft Power Platform. So what we want to do here is really just provide you with introduction, show you that and teach you the various different components and features that make up the platform. We'll try and sort of start setting in the back of your mind the various different areas where it's best to use one particular Power Platform solution compared to the other. And really, that's what we need to be doing at this point in our journey with the Power Platform, be able to sort of map each particular tool to a certain business requirement. And then finally, we'll sort of discuss and try and learn some of the value, that the Power Platform can bring to the table, particularly when we're trying to implement either simple or more complex business solutions. So this diagram really nicely summarizes the capabilities that we've got here. And effectively, we can sort of just in a nutshell describe the Power Platform as our low-code tool that we can use to build a range of different applications that typically would look to integrate alongside some of the core Microsoft 365 services that our organization is using already. So things like our Office 365, Microsoft Azure, and indeed maybe any existing Dynamics 365 applications that we might use as well. In there, we've got 4 sort of core products that we talk about in this course and that we need to have a good appreciation of. So first of all, we've got our Power Apps, and this is our rapid low-code development environment for when we want to build out custom apps to suit different business needs. Within this tool, we've got access to different services, connectors, and also as well a scalable data service and app platform in the shape of Microsoft Dataverse. And we can also look to maybe extend out the Power Apps and also look to use this alongside any existing data sources that our organization may have. So for example, it could be that we're using, SQL Server quite extensively. It could be we're using SharePoint lists. It could be that we're using other third-party products, maybe using things like Salesforce or SAP. Power Apps doesn't really care too much in terms of where our data sources are, and we can very quickly and easily build an app facing any potential data source, and therefore get ahead a lot faster. It's not a case that we have to migrate a load of data into the Power Platform first, in order to sort of achieve that. Within Power Apps, we can create a mixture of both web and mobile-based applications that can run on a variety of different devices. So everything from a Windows right through to an Android or an iOS type device. And we can also create applications that are external facing as well, which is a concept that we'll return to shortly. And really, when we think about apps themselves, and on our own sort of phones and devices, we typically have a variety of different sort of apps that we as individuals use, each day to be able to sort of, to enhance maybe areas of our lives. And really, businesses are no exception in this regard. Businesses need these key sort of apps. Businesses need the ability to very quickly and easily deploy these out. And in the past, if we're looking to build out any form of business application, it would typically be a very onerous type affair. Take many months, if not years, to create out, would require very specialized expertise to be able to sort of create And really, what we can hope to do with our Power Apps is avoid that expense, get going very quickly, and get to the heart of addressing the key issues that our organisations are facing, as opposed to having to just talking shop about it for and not actually do anything about it. Yep. So just to answer your question there in the chat, Renee, so we're going to be talking about the three different types of Power Apps today: our Canvas, model-driven app, and our Power Apps portals, and we'll have a few demonstrations of that as well. So moving on then, we then got Power Automate, and this is where we wanted to create these different automation and different workflows between our apps and services. So whether we are just wanting to maybe improve our own personal productivity, whether we're wanting to integrate our different business systems together, this is where Power Automate comes into the equation. And really, if we've got a particularly cumbersome or tiresome, repetitive task, that we know can be automated very easily, then Power Automate is going to provide our gateway of being able to go in and hopefully build that out very straightforwardly. And the idea is that if we can put this into the hands of our subject matter experts, the people in our organization who are doing this day in, day out, then they can look to build out these automations themselves. And also we can look to integrate our different Power Automate flows with different areas of the Power Platform where there's a compelling reason to do so. Power BI, the BI here standing for Business Intelligence, is our analytics service that we can use to deliver insights regarding the various data that our organization works with. So typically as part of our Power Apps and our Power Automate components, we'll be working with data quite extensively, maybe inputting or updating data, or batch processing data. So Power BI gives us a very nice interface that we can use to display this data, maybe perform aggregations, and really sort of tell a bit of a story regarding our data. And really, if using this tool, we can start to build solutions that allow businesses to focus on using our data as opposed to managing it instead. And really, it's the analysis and insights leg of the Power Platform and the go-to tool that we look to go to whenever we're doing any, or we need to do any form of analytics at all within the platform. Finally, we've got our Power Virtual Agents, and this is where we can start to bring in some artificial intelligence capabilities into the platform, in the form of these sort of web-based chatbots. So, you've probably all been on websites where there's some form of sort of live chat functionality that allows us to go on and speak to somebody, maybe answer a query relating to our orders or something like that. And it's really great that we have that in place, but potentially the cost of maintaining that could be quite high, particularly maybe on a 24/7 basis, having somebody, at the end of the line, having it so, avoiding a situation where customers having to wait maybe 5 to 10 minutes for an agent to be available. These sort of things start to become issues over time. So in the past, what we could maybe look to do is maybe go out into Microsoft Azure, get a developer involved, and they could build us out an artificial intelligence or based chatbot that could then be used to maybe deal with those sort of low-hanging fruit type sort of queries and questions on our website. But the main challenge with that is that we need to get a developer involved to build that out. And again, we're back in the same problems that I spoke about a few moments ago. Time and cost start to become a real issue. So with Power Virtual Agents, what we've got here instead is the ability to build out these chatbots, but in a low-code fashion. We've got a really nice sort of drag and drop interface that we can use. It becomes very trivial to build out these chatbots. Literally anybody could go in and do this. And the ideal sweet spot for this solution is that if we can put this into the hands of our subject matter experts in the organization, then they can very quickly sort of use the knowledge that they have regarding their own processes and then look to build a solution that's going to be fit for purpose for them. These chatbots can then be embedded in various different areas, as we'll see later on today, and it really sort of helps speed things up and ensures that we can sort of deal, as I say, with those low-hanging fruit, those common sort of questions. What's the status of my order? How can I find out more about this particular product? Various different questions like that we can look to automate using this tool. Underneath all of this, we've then got a range of, I guess, what we would call sort of shared services that the Power Platform uses that we're going to be returning to, in a short while. So, for example, we've got a range of different sort of data connectors that we can leverage in the Power Platform across different apps and services. We've spoken already about Microsoft Dataverse, which is our database as a service that we can use. So maybe if we're looking to migrate away from an Excel-based process, or maybe looking to formalize and better manage the way we're storing data as an organization, then Dataverse is our go-to tool. And then finally, with AI Builder, we've got a range of different off-the-shelf models that we can leverage within our different apps and services. And as we'll see, we've got some very interesting capability here that again can often negate the need for us having to go out and consume and build out solutions using Microsoft Azure. So lots of really great stuff here that we're going to be diving into today in sort of further detail. So as you mentioned already, with our Power Apps, this is about providing us our rapid low-code development environment that we can use to build out different sort of maybe role-based or task-based applications that can typically connect to a variety of different data sources. Particularly, this is particularly so when it comes to our Canvas apps. And one of the main benefits of these that we'll see later on is that we can connect up to not only things like Microsoft Dataverse, but also as well, SharePoint and other external sources as well. So it really makes it quite a flexible tool that we can use. If it's a case that we are invested heavily with our Microsoft Dataverse environments and we wanted to use that as our one-stop shop for when it comes to our data in the platform, then we can very quickly and easily build out model-driven applications that sit directly on top of Dataverse. And the main advantage of going down that route is that it's incredibly easy to build out a fully functional application. And as we'll see as part of a demo later on, literally we can do this in about 5-10 minutes. So it really speeds up and makes us a lot more agile as an organization. And finally, all of these applications can be used in across a variety of different sort of ways and different sort of formats. So, regardless of whether we wanted to use it on a desktop, in our web browser, on our Android devices or iOS devices, there's ways and means to be able to consume these in different ways. As we've spoken about, Power Automate, as the name implies, is all around automation in the platform. If we're looking to start to tie our different business systems together, and really, whether it's a simple automation or maybe a more complex one, there's routes to use this tool in different ways to satisfy different requirements. So again, the idea behind this is that we don't need to go off and write, for example, maybe, a bespoke C# app to integrate our systems together. We've got a variety of different connectors available to us that we can leverage in here. And also a main benefit of this tool is the fact that we can look to integrate it alongside not only our sort of cloud-based systems, but also any ones that may be on-premise or may be considered legacy in some shape or format. We've got within the Power Platform a tool known as the on-premise data gateway, and this will allow us to install effectively a secure tunnel on our on-premise network that we can then use to expose out our internal services into our cloud environment, into our tenant. So for example, if we've got a SQL Server database that's in a very sort of protected environment, we can quickly and easily use it within the Power Platform as if it was available as a cloud-based source by getting the on-premise gateway involved. So a lot of things that we can do here and a lot of ways in which we can use Power Automate. Our main focus for this particular course is on the sort of the cloud flow capability and also the on business process flows. We've also got as well AI-based desktop flows, which we'll touch upon very briefly, but it's not really something that you need to concern yourself too much for the purposes of this exam. Power BI, as we mentioned, is all about just getting us some really effective and usable analytics from our different apps and services. So again, what's quite nice about this tool is that we can use it across a variety of different device types. We've got options to be able to build out reporting solutions that can be consumed on our desktop machines, that can be viewed within our online sort of Power BI portal. And then also as well, we've got dedicated applications that can be installed onto our mobile devices that allow us to then expose out the same information. And really what we're trying to drive here is the ability for people to get that sort of ad hoc analysis over what's going on in the organization. Again, we're not too concerned here, or Power BI doesn't really care about what data sources that you bring into the equation. And we've got a diverse set of different options that we can leverage to bring in data from a variety of different sources in much the same way as we've discussed already when it comes to our Canvas apps, when it comes to Power Automate flows. From here, we can look to bundle up our different reporting solutions into an application or into something that we can then consume in the organization. And again, what's quite nice about Power BI is that it's a very engaging tool to work with. We can sort of go on, we can apply filters very quickly, and hopefully we can use this tool to get people a bit more excited about their data as well. certainly, in a much more engaging way than maybe a traditional Excel-based reporting tool would be, or indeed maybe, if you're coming from maybe legacy tools such as maybe SSRS and things like that, certainly this is going to compare a lot more favorably on the sort of the excitement, scale. With Power Virtual Agents, as we discussed, this is all about giving us the ability to build out these different sort of chatbots that we can use, and it should be relatively easy and straightforward for anybody in the organization to go and create these. We've got a nice little drag and drop interface. We can configure the bot to go off and ask different questions. We can integrate this very easily with our Power Automate cloud flows, and really we are sort of doing things such as maybe going off and querying our CRM system, returning the current status of an order for a customer, and other sort of useful information that typically, if we're having to get a human agent involved, could take maybe several minutes or maybe even longer to be able to resolve. We can test our bot at any time. We can see we get a nice little panel on here that we can use. So as we're developing our particular chatbot, it becomes very easy just to confirm that, yep, everything's working as expected. The chatbot can then be deployed out into a variety of different platforms. So whether we're wanting it as an internal bot that we can use, embed it into Teams and tools like that, or we can maybe put it onto our website, integrate it into Facebook. We've got lots of different diverse options, at our disposal. Excuse me. And then finally, when we're implementing a chatbot for the first time, we want to ensure that it's driving value within the organization or with our customers, and also most crucially, it's not causing more frustration than happiness. So to help us with this, we've got a range of different analytics tools that we can turn to just sort of keep an eye on our bot, make sure that things are sort of working as expected, and also to ensure that we're obviously meeting and exceeding our customers' requirements. When it comes to Microsoft Dataverse, what we've got here is a scalable data service and app platform that allows our users to securely store and manage data. Typically, we can bring this data in from a variety of different sources, maybe as a one-time action, but we've also got options to be able to do this on a continual basis. And we can look to integrate this data very easily within our different business apps that we build, and also as well within a structured and a well understood common data model. So, when we're moving, when we're working with Dataverse across different areas of our business, or maybe with different potential customers, we know what to expect each time. We know that, for example, there's always going to be an account table, and we know we can very easily map out different sort of common business objects into the Dataverse without needing to reinvent the wheel each time. And really, we talk about Dataverse being the common currency that enables all the different components of the Power Platform to work together. And it really is the foundation that enables the consolidation, displaying, and also manipulation of our data. What we can also benefit from when it comes to Dataverse is a very sort of rich history and and lots of investment over the years. So if you're coming maybe from a dynamic CRM background, from the on-premise days, or maybe further or maybe longer back, then what we've got here with Dataverse is what used to be the old dynamic CRM database, the old sort of XRM framework. Over time, this has been moved into the cloud. It became the backend database of Dynamics 365 Enterprise, and more recently is now sitting within the Power Platform as our sort of go-to sort of data source. And you may have previously heard of it being referred to as the Common Data Service until it was renamed last year. So effectively, if you have worked with Dynamics CRM in the past, then good news, there's a lot of the same sort of concepts, a lot of the same sort of ways in which we customize and build out our solutions remains the same. So you don't necessarily have to go in and learn about everything new again. There'll be some new stuff that's been come into the equation since then, but it's not going to be an arduous journey for you. And also as well, because Dataverse comes from CRM, because we've got now our various different Dynamics 365 applications like Dynamics 365 Sales, Customer Service, and Field Service, all of these sit on top of Dataverse. So if you're already using one or more of these different solutions in your organization, then the good news is you're already using the Power Platform. All of the Dynamics 365 customer engagement applications are in effect sort of first-party apps and services that use the Power Platform extensively underneath the hood. So it becomes very easy for us and natural for us to look to extend out into the Power Platform if we're using one or more of these different solutions. Finally, as well, we've got some really nice ways in which we can integrate this Microsoft Dataverse into things like Microsoft Azure as well. It's not really a detailed discussion point for today, or indeed for the PL-900 exam. It's more for when you get into the developer type content, but it's worth just being aware that we've got these nice integration options at our disposal. Now, we've talked already about the fact that many of these apps and services in the Power Platform are sort of in effect data agnostic. And what I mean by that is that the platform doesn't really care too much in terms of where we're bringing data in from. It really just provides us with a broad framework in which we can go in and just connect up our different apps and services. And the primary way in which we sort of do this is via our data connectors. We've got access to well over 350 plus different connectors that we can use to bridge data in from our different data sources and start to use them alongside things like Power Automate and Power Apps as well. These same connectors are also available as well if we're using Azure Logic Apps as well. It's worth noting that Power Automate is using Logic Apps technology underneath the hood. And we've also got nice potential routes to be able to migrate our Power Automate flows into Logic Apps for when we wanted to maybe formalize or start leveraging more enterprise type sort of capability within our different workflows. So, it becomes almost sort of trivial to start connecting our different apps and services together using the Power Platform. Some of the connectors that we work with will tend to be will sometimes be marked as what we call premium connectors. And what this means is that we typically would need some form of paid Power Platform license to be able to sort of leverage them. So the vast majority of our different sort of common connectors, so things like, for example, SharePoint lists or Excel and others, these are typically included and can be used as part of our common Microsoft 365 licenses. So if we're using things like Office Business Premium or E3 or E5, then the good news is that we can actually use some Power Platform capability to maybe build a simple Power Automate flow or maybe a simple Canvas app if we wanted to. The main challenge with that, though, is that certain connectors won't be available to us. So if, for example, we can't use things like the SQL Server connector, we can't use things like the Microsoft Dataverse connector until we purchase a dedicated Power Apps license, either a per app or a per user license. So licensing isn't really too much of a consideration for this particular course and not something that you need to be able to worry about when it comes to the exam itself, but it's worth just noting that we have got this distinction between our sort of standard and premium connectors. And all you need to know is that premium connectors will typically require a license in some shape or format. As I mentioned, with the sheer breadth of different connectors available to us, that you should be able to hopefully find a connector that applies for your particular scenario, your particular sort of uses case. But for when that's not possible, what we can also look to do is go out and build our own sort of custom connectors. And this is where we can effectively define out and build out and expose out our own maybe custom app or service for use within the Power Platform. And the main reason why we would do this is so we can make it a lot easier for us to work with these different sort of services. So, for example, we're not having to go in each time and construct very complex set of Power Automate flows that are going off and doing all manner of complex HTTP requests. Instead, we can wrap these around easy to call actions and triggers that our citizen developers and that the less technical members of our team can actually use when building out their different sort of workflows. What's also quite nice about our custom connectors is that we can build these out using a wizard within the Maker portal. or if our developer can provide us with an open API definition or Postman collection that represents all of the various different endpoints and different actions that our connector has, then we can also look to import that into the platform very easily. So custom connectors will also be typically used by companies like independent software vendors and people who are wanting to maybe expose out their own service for wider consumption on the Power Platform. So for example, if you go in and look at the Salesforce connector as an example, that would have started off as a custom connector that has been built out and then submitted to Microsoft. They've given it a review and then it's made available for others across the globe to be able to build out. So it's worth just remembering that, if you're wanting to look at do that as an organization, the first starting point will be a custom connector. And then very quickly, in terms of going back to the licensing conversation earlier on, we would also class our custom connectors as being a premium feature. So therefore, we would need to have some form of paid license to be able to start using and leveraging these within our projects. So when it comes to our different connectors, then they will typically be exposed out as two different types of data sources. So the first and most common will be ones which bring data back in sort of a tabular sort of format. So we'll get data back in a structured table format. These will be well suited for our Canvas Power Apps because they can then go in and directly read and display these tables through elements such as our galleries, forms, and other controls. Also, as well, if the data source supports this, then our Canvas apps can also create, edit, and delete data from these sources. And typical examples of tabular data sources include things like Dataverse, SharePoint, and SQL Server. The next kind of data source are our function-based data. And these are ones that use functions behind the scenes to be able to interact with the data sources. So in most scenarios, they'll maybe look to return data in some shape or format, but may also offer some additional, more extensive action behind the scenes, which is maybe the ability to send out an email, maybe update permissions, or maybe create a calendar event in Exchange. So examples of this include things like Project Online, Azure Blob Storage. We've got a connector for Office 365, and different sort of actions such as the ability to return the user's current manager. This is what we would class as a function-based data. We would just supply details about the current user, and then from there the API will go back and return us the information that we've requested from that. But regardless of what type of connector we're using, we would look to bring this into our apps or automations. So the concept of triggers applies mainly when it comes to our Power Automate cloud flows. And this is what effectively prompts a particular flow to start the actions that we defined in there. We've got a mixture of different sort of trigger types that we can use within our different flows. So for example, we can maybe have a time-based trigger. So maybe every day at 8 a.m. it's going to go off and trigger this. Or it could be maybe based off an action that occurs in our underlying data source. So every time maybe a new record is created or updated, we can go off and run our particular flow. All of our flows will always need to have a one and only trigger in there. So for example, we can't have a flow that has multiple triggers. In that situation, we would need to go off and create additional flows for each trigger that we want. Next is the concept of actions, and these are used in both our Power Automate flows and also in Power Apps as well. And these are steps that are prompted by the user or by a particular trigger that go off and do some form of interaction with backend data sources. So for example, it could be we have an action that goes off and sends an email. It could be maybe goes and writes a new line in our backend data source. The good thing is that these actions can be exposed out in our Canvas app as well. So for example, we could have it so when we press a particular button, it goes off and then calls our external service or does a patch or maybe sends off an email. Various different things like that we can do with that. So we'll return to these concepts a little bit later on today when we start looking at these tools in a bit more detail, but it's useful just to keep these in mind when we are starting out with these tools for the first time. Now, one of the benefits with the Power Platform, is the fact that we've got these, diverse set of different connectors that we can use. And obviously it becomes very easy for us to start sharing data between our different apps and services. And that's great in terms of if we're trying to drive forward initiative, in terms of if we're trying just to get things done in the organization. If we can remove a bit of friction around that, then that's going to be all the better for our development efforts. But it can have its own distinct set of disadvantages and drawbacks for the organization. What happens if, for example, somebody was to go in, connect to our CRM system, download all of our prospect data, all of our core contact data, save it off into their own personal Dropbox, and the next day they've gone off to our competitor with all of our key sort of details. So we do have to have a bit of sort of common sense when it comes to using these tools, and a bit of governance and control around this, particularly if you're wanting to promote and encourage the organization and our IT teams to actually start considering using these solutions more extensively across the organization. So we've got effectively 3 pillars within the Power Platform that we can look to leverage to help address these concerns and ensure that we are set up set up well from a security and from a compliance standpoint. So the first of all is our data loss prevention policies. This allows us to ensure that we can look to, so that if there's a mixture of different connectors that we don't want the organization to use in the organization, we can look to sort of disable these on a global basis, or perhaps on a per environment basis. So for example, in the in the situation or scenario that I spoke about a few moments ago, we can maybe look to go in and block the Dropbox connector from ever being used in the organization, or maybe block the Dropbox connector from being used whenever it's also connected to our CRM data source as well. So a lot of flexibility there when it comes to crafting policies to suit the organization. And really, the key word there that we can see in the slide is sensible. Don't be going too sort of over the top when it comes to these policies, to the point where you are causing friction unnecessarily. Craft what is going to be sensible and what is going to be sufficient from a risk management standpoint to suit your particular organization. Next, we've got compliance and data privacy, and certainly as a cloud provider, Microsoft really does set itself out in terms of when it comes to its commitment around trust, transparency, standards, conformance, and also compliance with various different regulatory standards. Microsoft protects data in transit as it's used between different user devices and between different sort of data centers. Encrypted connections are used throughout all of that. All of the public endpoints are secured using industry standard transport layer security, or TLS. And by default, it's required that you must connect to all server endpoints using TLS 1.2 or higher, therefore ensuring that we've got the maximum level of protection around that. Microsoft have gone to good lengths in terms of to ensure that we've got good sort of compliance when it comes to different regulatory standards. So things like, for example, GDPR compliance, is met when it comes to using the Power Platform, and also as well the underlying data centers and the underlying platforms, all conform to things like PCI DSS. Data centers, and policies are in place like ISO 27001 and all of that stuff. So we can be assured quite well, that Microsoft takes data security and data privacy very seriously, and this is reflected in how the platform is built out and how we use it. And finally, we've got the concept of accessibility when it comes to the Power Platform, but you could probably argue this is actually an important consideration for any IT system that's being used today. Really what we're trying to achieve here is to ensure that when we're building out these different apps and services, we're making them as accessible as possible, and we're also making them so that they're any kind of user across the world can use them. So if we've got maybe users with vision impairment, users maybe who have got issues potentially working with things like keyboards and mouse, various different things like that, we can hopefully we're given a sort of framework when it comes to these different apps and tools to be able to ensure that we can meet and exceed these accessibility requirements. Now, typically there'll be some work that we need to do. We're effectively just given the the broad sort of tool set to be able to build this out. But certainly, we can go in and we can meet these particular sort of concerns very easily and ensure that those with maybe vision, hearing, or other impairments can use our apps, in the way that is most sort of appropriate for them. So altogether, then, when we start thinking about putting all this together, we return to some realities of where we are, when it comes to different businesses around the world, and really, we could probably quite confidently say that we are in a data-driven world, and it becomes very challenging and difficult for organizations to take advantage of the various different data that they have access to. So this is where the value of the Power Platform really starts to come into the equation. It can add in a lot of value by allowing us to analyze, act, and automate our different sort of processes and start to actually take advantage of all the different data that our organization is making use of. And when we start to fit these different pieces together, by maybe, for example, building a custom app in Power Apps, building a couple of processes that connect off to data that's been collected in that app, and then finally having a Power BI dashboard that exposes all this out, then we start to get a really nice end-to-end solution in place that's leveraging all aspects of the Power Platform. And this is where we can really start to drive the most value by using all of these together. So, each of these particular apps and services are strong in their own right, but you get so much more value when you start thinking outside the box and you start thinking about ways in which you can use all of these different things together. So, really, we talk about transformation a lot when it comes to the Power Platform. So organizations, small and large, can use these tools, in the way that they sort of see fit. And the aim of today and the aim of when it comes to looking at the Power Platform for the first time is very, very much sort of seeing at a high level what these different tools can sort of do, starting to understand the ways in which we can apply them in a real life organization, and be able to sort of describe the various different capabilities as well. And this is what we're going to be continuing and looking at throughout all of the day's session. So before we move on then, does anyone have any questions at all on what we've covered so far? No? Okay. So what we will do is we will move on to